So, how about this? La da 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 ta da. Cha da. All right. Blessed love and peace. This is a joint. Uh, it's not a mukbang. I'm eating the earth. I'm eating the air. I'm eating the energy. So everything's a mukbang. Any vlog is a mukbang, yeah, in that respect. But this is just a kind of like an update joint, and doing it live. It's kind of like the monthly joint. I'm back on the grid from the mountains, and preparing for the full moon arriving this week, inshallah, God willing, Bezat Hashem, Jai Om. Vesak it is, one of the holiest days in the Buddhist calendar of the earth. And so, as the full moon repertoire, I am connecting again with the internet web phenomena, and sharing some things from some insight that is gleaned from off the after. Actually, beauty, what up? What up, reggae brethren? Blessed love. So the first thing I'm going to share is a news report. How about that? First of all, to explain the news report, we must recognize that here in Northeast Ohio, the news I receive primarily comes from the birds, straight up. The Blue Jays are the Air Force of the forest, and they share the security and international news. The sparrows right here we got as the politics and local news, and then we got the robins that provide the weather and economics report. Serious. What up, brother? So this is a recent news report, an economics news report from the robins, and it goes like this. I'm translating here, so we have to have some patience and some understanding for any inaccuracies and undue approximation. So here it is. Here in Northeast Ohio, at this moment, we are experiencing comparatively low levels of rainfall. The streams are at a lower level, and this may be due to a comparatively lower amount of precipitation during the winter months, less thaw translating into the natural water flows, and comparatively moderate amount of precipitation during this early spring season, and that's where things are. And so recognizing that as the weather report, we can also translate that into the economics report, because it can be expected based upon this current experience that the agriculture for this upcoming season may be comparatively less. The yield may be less because there's less water to provide for the vegetation. Now, that might also be comparatively affecting the organic agriculture, distinctive from the factory chemical agriculture, whereby those agrarians who utilize factory agriculture, factory chemical agriculture, chemicals for factory agriculture, may have access to additional types of chemicals, fertilizers, and additional things to compensate for the lack of moisture, for the lack of hydration, and so that there may be less expected change in yield in terms of that type of agriculture, but there's still a consequence, because if there's a different chemical that is being utilized for that purpose, there might be a different cost for the agriculture, and there may be a financial cost, but then also a health cost along those lines as well. And the agriculture that's organic, that relies significantly, increasingly upon the natural waterfall, may be expected again to have a smaller yield, and thus the prices might be higher, because lower supply, higher demand, comparatively speaking, results in those type of market conditions. So Now that's for the early part. That's for the produce that grows in the early part of the summer season, infected increasingly by the current conditions. We may have additional rain, fall, and precipitation conditions for the latter part of the midsummer and late summer agriculture that may have different types of yields. So, but that's for the moment, at the moment, and that's the economic news report from the brother Aaron. Yes, I downloaded the most recent coalition joint that the sister has. I have yet to watch it though, but I do have it. I'm off the grid and off the internet, so I'm on once a month. So I'm planning to follow up on that. But I'm looking forward to that. If you send, if there's a link to it on YouTube or whatever, what you are planning, I appreciate that. I gave you my contact information as well, brother. So you're welcome to hit me up and let me know. We can spread it around on this side. So that's what we have going on here. That's the economics report from the Robins here in Northeast Ohio, and you can take it for what it's worth as you like from wherever kinfolk are at this moment. Now, what I have to share at this moment is just again some considerations, some insights. I've got notes, so I'm going to be reading comparatively directly from the notes because it's somewhat just recent or whatever, and for the sake of comparative succinctness, as I can tend to be somewhat verbosity, monstrosity inclined, I'm just gonna do for the notes. And I'm not accustomed to cats jumping on, so if cats want to chop up something or brethren have jumped on before, okay, I make note of that. And I presume it's the same one from before, but I'm making note of that. And actually, that reminds me, I might have WhatsApp now, because I remember when we talked before, I didn't have it as readily accessible like a couple months ago when we chop it up before when we reason. But we can connect, God willing. So I am located right across the street from a major health institution. It's actually fire engines that are going by at the moment, but there's a lot of sirens in this vicinity periodically. It's a busy intersection. Or it's not actually an intersection per se, but it's a busy street. Even on a day like today, which is an off work day. I'm gonna let the siren pass before I continue on. If cats want to jump on too and talk about something else, the cats are welcome to. Otherwise, I'm just gonna flow with my notes at this moment. So, I communicate with brethren in recent weeks and months that many years ago when I studied in England, I refer to that as a dream experience. It is my first time off this plantation, interacting with brethren from around the earth and opening my eyes to just the ways of the world and the peoples of the world, the politics, the business, and all them other things at a very young age, just graduating from undergrad 21, 22, 22. So, dream experience, seeing the places that I only saw in books and additionally before that. So, dream experience, beautiful, beautiful experience. Then a few years later, when I had the opportunity and I can follow through in studying abroad again in Africa, in South Africa, Land of Xhosa, Cape Town specifically, I refer to that as a heavenly experience. Heavenly because I am the land of my ancestors who are extracted from homeland. And so I'm reunited with that experience, even though my ancestry comes further north of that particular vicinity towards Western Africa and Eastern Africa. Still just being on that continent, heavenly experience, being welcomed by brethren there, saying, welcome home, brother. Yo, heavenly experience. Beautiful again, spiritually affirming, and actually is heavenly experience. Then, yeah. I think I did it. I said yes. Here it is.
Hey, what's up, man?
Yeah, what's going on, brother?
Not much. I'm just chill, you know.
All right.
I love you, like. I love your view on the world, you know. It's just so like, it's just like fresh, you know.
What's that?
Your view on the world, man. It's just kind of dope, you know.
Oh, I appreciate that, man. Well, it takes one to know one. How about that? And to be honest, it's just honesty, man. It's just honesty, and it's nasty truth. Like Lao Tzu teaches in the Tao Te Ching, true words are not beautiful, and beautiful words are not true. And so when we walk in this life and we have a dedication to truthfulness, yo, it's nasty, yo, because I mean we call out what we see around us. We can yell at the machine and everything else like that, but then also we have to call ourselves out, and that's what the nasty business is, yo, because that's, ooh, it's icky, it's icky. But when we do that, yo, it's a light heart that comes from it, and we can have these gray hairs and that light heart and everything else like that. But that's actually, to be honest, that's the true fountain of youth. To be honest, is truth, and it ain't easy. And it ain't guaranteed, because I can be as honest as I can be today and do something and just don't. It's all gone the next day. So God willing, I do my best to stay true to being true. So I think I've utilized my true threshold of the word true today at the moment. I've said it enough at the moment. So, but that's what it is. And all thanks and praise to the Most High. For the guidance and the strength and the courage and the support, and seeing kinfolk who have a similar inclination and striving, and additionally, yo, man, that's just it's light supporting light, and I appreciate that. And to be honest, it's easier to see amongst youngsters, because youngsters have less how we say, some elders call it skin in the game, but less dirt. How about that? Young kinfolk tend to have less grime and everything else in this game or whatever else, so they have an increasing proclivity towards honesty. And additionally, because again, to be in this life, to be on this earth, to walk in this realm, it's some nasty business. And so a lot of cats, when we get to be older, we just quiet up, because we know we're going to be very careful when we call out on others, because the other cats can be easy in calling it out on us. So that's what it is. Uncle Ruckus, who is that me? Am I Uncle Ruckus, or what is Uncle Ruckus? Because I'm saying youngsters.
That's a cartoon character that you gotta look like, you know.
Is that Kyrie Irving? Is that the Kyrie Irving brother? Is that Kyrie Irving thing, or something else? I don't know.
He's from some 2000s show. He's chill though. He's chill.
Okay. Ha ha ha! I can. Look at that. So, anyways. Yeah, but anyway, so bro, what's going on? What's on your mind, brother? What's happening on your side?
I'm just chilling, man. Like, I went fishing today, so I'm happy, you know.
You said you were fishing today?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Caught some bass, some largemouth. That was good.
Okay.
I'm just like trying to find like a more like, you know, honed in version of peace, you know.
Okay.
Just like a more like different view of the world, I guess.
Yeah. So, where are you in life in terms of like your walk? Like, are you in school? Are you working? Are you chilling out? Are you like on a gap year or a gap decade, or what's the scene where you're at, man? Come on, what's up with the shade? What's up with the shade? I'm sure it's love, because it's out in the open. So yeah.
That's my boy. But yeah, no, like I work in a fish store actually.
Okay.
Actually.
Aha. Okay.
I'm a high school student. It's just kind of chill, you know. I'm just right, you know, like that middle ground, just like understanding things and like slowly learning about the world, I guess.
Okay. All right. And so I remember like you're friends with Xavier and Corey and the What's Out crew and everything. Okay. How do you get connected with them?
So Xavier is my crew coach actually.
Okay.
And then I met Corey over the summer.
Okay.
And so they've been like a mentors for me, I guess, and like people I've grown close to.
Okay.
And then I met you through them, I guess.
Yeah. Beautiful. And so I've been actually, Corey and Xavier and I have a talk scheduled for mañana, for tomorrow. And we're planning some additional convos along those lines. So that's continuing on. So all right. So you're high school. What do you like to study in high school? Like, what are some of the things that kind of like vibe with you in terms of like the readings or the assignments or whatever, or like if you're into art or music, or what type of things get your interest and attention?
I guess like I'm a big art guy. I love I just love like God's creatures. Like I'm a big fish guy. Like I keep aquariums, I guess.
Okay, beautiful.
And then I got saltwater tanks.
Okay.
I got shrimp tank.
Aha. The aquatic enthusiast.
Different creatures.
Yeah, beautiful. All right, so where does that come from?
I don't know. I think it's like I've always been like fishing. It's kind of just like it just comes naturally. Feel me? It just slowly, develop and manifest into some like job now and like a hobby, I guess.
Okay. All right, so I got this joint for you to consider. This is hot off the presses. I shared this exclusive with a beautiful young sister, earlier this past week, and it was raining, it was dusk, it was getting late, and so we couldn't talk that very long. But she's I won't give it too much information, but anyways, we had this convo. So here it is. This is what it is. Now, if we're looking like at life, and particularly at animals, science has a way of categorizing life and animals. So the first thing that science does is kind of say, okay, here's plant life, botany, and then we have biology, we have the animal life. So that's kind of like the first category of distinction of life on Earth. And then all the plants have their subcategories, and then we have the subcategories for animals. And the next subcategory for animals is vertebrate and invertebrate. So invertebrates kind of like the microscopic beings and amoebas and insects and stuff like that. And then the vertebra are the classification that you have there: fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. And then we get into further details, yeah? All right, so I'm going somewhere with this. So here's another way of thinking about like life and categorizing life. And the first thing is plant and animal, just like before. Same old. But instead of just saying plant and animal, it's how about this, looking at it like this way: moving life and stationary life. Life that stays put and doesn't move too much on its own, and then life that does move, okay? So that's still along the same lines of plant and animal, but it's still like a different concept to recognize that, because it's like, trees, don't sleep on trees. But then the moving life, there's that. Okay, so then we have the moving life. All right, if we look into the subcategories, rather than saying vertebrate and invertebrate, how about this? We say predator and non-predator. Okay, because when we look at predator, we're looking at behavior, and we're looking at characteristics, and we're looking at expectations. Because vertebrate and invertebrate is kind of like just saying like who's like us, and who's increasingly like along the hierarchy. But if we look at predator and non-predator, first we can like look at who's out to get us and this and the other, and just understand life in a different context. That's increasing. The earth is flat, of course it is, until you continue walking around and find yourself in the same place after you've walked around a sphere, yeah? But and I don't know if that's just a joke or if that's if the kinfolk is actually making that proclamation. They're welcome to jump on if we can do that and make that argument if you like. But in terms of predator and non-predator, it's a matter of understanding the nature of things and then finding our harmony and our peace with the life around us, in those categories. So anyways, it might be a little bit too heady or too kind of like a little bit too heavy or whatever, deep or whatever, but the sister I was talking with, she was a biochemistry major, and so it was just kind of like, she was just like, oh yeah, okay. So but anyways, that was the thing. But fish, it looked like you did saltwater fish, but you said you also like the freshwater fish as well?
Yes, I have 3 freshwater tanks and 1 saltwater.
Okay.
My saltwater is struggling right now. all the chemicals are kind of hard to keep. Like,
Ah,
I
yeah.
got some corals, then I got this algae. This is actually really good. It tastes pretty good.
Algae is very healthy, actually. If you look at island cultures like Japan, and additionally, like seaweed, oh, look at that, he's hardcore. See, now you're showing out. You're showing out now. I have a thing like I eat like I had a lemon I was gonna bring today, and I eat the lemon just whole with the rind and everything else like that. I call it gorilla mode, but you just went gorilla mode on the algae, so that's impressive. Kudos to you. Um, but yeah, the saltwater takes levels, and you got to have the as you already know, all the different types of I'm trying to think of the specific term, but the levels to keep the aquatic life copacetic. So your fish, are they plant eaters, or are they eating up other smaller fishies?
So, I'm on freshwater tanks. These guys, uh, these guys just this tank's gonna be rescaped in a few days.
Okay.
They eat this nice little like super vitamin pellet.
Okay.
And my goldfish, he has his little herb mix. I'm
Okay.
feeding him right now. Actually, he's a
Ah.
good guy.
Kanji fish food.
What?
I'm just looking at the writing on the bag, Japanese writing.
Good little fish. And then my catfish, who's not turtles, is over there. Does his thing.
Okay. Keeping it clean.
And yeah, they're just good, good animals. I feel like, and like they like I guess help keep me like doing something with all that maintenance and all that work.
Yeah.
It just keeps me away from the bad things in life.
I hear you.
Kind of grounds me. So like I should take care of those animals so I don't get estrayed from my goal and like the main mission. I feel like
Yep. X is in the house. So what up, brother X?
Eggs.
Watching fish in the tank is very meditative. I have a friend who stays in an institutional facility at the moment, and there's a big aquarium at the beginning in the lobby, and so just like the water is healing, the fish immersed in it, moving around. It's just like a very soothing kind of relaxed kind of vibe and everything. What up, X?
Eggs, what's up?
So the fish are it's a therapy, and I remember when I was growing up, we had a fish tank as well, with all different types of fish, and it's something you can just like sit and just look. It's like a TV screen that's live, and you just can watch the fish and watch the fish and watch the fish, and kind of like you said, get immersed in kind of like that realm and forget about like what's going on, the stress and everything else like that, and kind of just vibe out with the fish. I'm kind of doing that right now, where I stay with the birds. Right? I share some bird seeds and bread, and the birds come through, and it's like, yo, birds flying, beautiful. So communing with the animals is a nice way of getting some balance, and getting a refresher from the stress and the anxieties and all the hecticness that we might find ourselves in within our conventional life. And additionally, so what are your interests in after high school? What are you interested in doing?
After high school, see, I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
Now, part of me wants to take that route of like open my own aquarium store.
Okay.
Like further into the fish hobby, but I love art too.
Okay.
So ideally, I feel like I'd have a fish store and like do art on the side, but then I really want to make jewelry. I feel like
Okay.
Like, I'm a big jewelry guy. Like I wear a lot of rings and stuff, and like
Okay.
different like small pieces.
Okay.
So like, I feel like ideally, I want to like form my own brand and just like express myself through those mediums.
Okay.
I guess.
Okay. What material do you work with in terms of the jewelry making? You showed me something.
I haven't gotten it.
Is that like is it like silver? Is it metal, or what type of metal or gems or anything do you utilize with the jewelry?
I haven't gotten to do much yet, but ideally, whenever I can, I want to do work with silver, I guess, and I want to play around with the oxidation of metals and like telling a story, I guess, like through how different metals get oxidized, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And like how like they show their age and their experience. through like different chemicals and different like interactions with the world, I guess.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Okay. Well, you might like me know further than I do about that, the details on that, but I know a modest amount, and I know that, I mean, obviously metals can be altered in terms of the coloring in addition through different methodologies, and whenever that can happen, it can be done in a very artistic way and additionally, and so I imagine that's something along the lines of what you're describing.
Yes, sir.
All right. So, one of the things when you talk about the fish, one of the things that occurs to me is the question of, do you know any fish stories? How about that? Any like traditional stories or personal stories about fish, of just like the experiences of fish?
Of the experiences of fish themselves, no.
Okay.
I guess like fish have always been a big part of like family life. I feel like going fishing, cooking fish, keeping fish, like it's things that like we all do in my household. I feel like so it's like a big part of that family aspect also.
Okay. And as I ask that question to you, I think about it, the answer to myself, and I mean, the first thing that comes to mind, to be honest, is like something like Finding Nemo. I don't know if you know that film or whatever, if you ever seen that, but I mean, to be honest, I'm not too much of a Disney joint, but I just know that's like a common frame of reference. And like there are a number of Disney films like that. I guess Little Mermaid might be able to fit into that category, but it's not that much about a fish. I think about another, like a traditional, like a classic novel that's called The Old Man and the Sea. Have you ever heard of that book before? I can share with you the gist of it. It's about a man. I think so. It's written by Ernest Hemingway, who's like a very well-known author from like from a century ago at this point. So back in the 50s, he was living in Cuba, in the land of the Taino. And he was just like chilling out over there. He wrote this book, and the book is about a man, like an old man, in the sea. This man is a fisherman, and he goes out in his boat into the ocean to catch a fish, as that's just his livelihood. And so, now to be honest, this was an assigned reading when I was in high school. I think I did not finish it because I did not finish any book that was assigned to me when I was in high school, because I didn't see myself in it. So I'm like, yo, I'm tired of reading about all these other cats. They ain't me. But it's a classic book. But I'll tell you, I'll just render the gist of it. So basically, he caught this fish, and it was a huge fish, and it was so huge, like it took him all the way out into the sea. Like he had a fight with the fish, and the fish was dragging him into deeper and deeper and deeper ocean. And usually, like most cats would just cut the line and be like, "Yo, I got to get back home," and I ain't no way I'm rowing back with me. But he just kept on going with it and went all the way to the sea. So finally, he kind of like he got the fish. And then he had to like bring it back then, and it was like, yo, he's an old man. He's out in the middle of the deep ocean now. He's got to go back to his home, to this island. And as he's going back and everything, he has the fish tied to his boat. As he's in his little boat, the fish is bigger than the boat. He's going back, and by the time he gets there, yo, the sharks done came in and ate it all up. And so it was like all for naught and everything else like that. So that's the gist of the story. But there's obviously a whole lot of other things, like themes and things that go into it. I don't know how it specifically ends. I think that was basically the gist of it. But anyways, one of the reasons why I say that is because when you talk about like opening up a fish store, and additionally or otherwise, or just being involved with fish, one way to cultivate other people's interest is having stories to tell about fish, and that they can remember. So obviously, like the visual of seeing the fish is one thing, but then when you can say, like, tell a story about the fish, where the fish come from, some of like traditional stories, like there's a story from Zulu, from South Africa, it's called Where Stories Come From. And in this story, there's a woman from a village who her children want to hear a story, and they don't know any stories. So she tries to go through like all the wilderness and everything, finding a story, and none of the animals can share with her any stories. So she finally goes onto this sea turtle, and she goes like down deep into the ocean and visits with like these people who live under the ocean, and finds out where the stories are. And so anyways, it's a long story, but when you tell a story like that, like it's memorable, and then people are like, oh, and they're like, yo, I want to get a fish now. So it's just another way of relating with people and sharing that energy and that enthusiasm. So, and particularly if you like, if like the fish are coming from a particular region, to have a story from that region that talk about that fish, because guaranteed the native culture has some type of story that talks about the fish, the nature of the fish, and additionally that gives additional details in it and otherwise. So that's one thing to consider as you're like going through your walk and finding things that vibe with you and finding your path. What's the weather like where you're at?
It's nice. It's a little bit. It's warm today. Out on that lake today. It was nice.
Okay.
Sun even down.
Okay.
Bass fishing. It was just a peaceful experience.
Yeah.
But we've had some rain down here.
Okay.
What about you?
So earlier today, it was somewhat rainy, misty, and then it was gray, overcast, as it tends to be in Ohio here. And then right now, we got the mobility. So this is what the scene is now. How about that?
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love the trees.
Yeah. You know what? To be honest, I didn't actually write it, but there was like sometimes I do some poetry and stuff like that. But this one I actually didn't write. I just did it like off the top of my head. But it was actually just a retelling of a story. And so I was sitting at the bus stop right across the street. And it was earlier, like a few months ago. So it was cold. There wasn't any green on the trees or anything else like that. So it was just like a very city scene of just like streets and lights. It was dusk, so it was getting dark and everything, but it was still some natural light. I'm just waiting there for the bus. And long story short, as I'm waiting there, all of a sudden, like there's an energy that is shared with me, and when I experienced that energy, all of a sudden it was just like instantaneous. All the trees just appeared, like they were always there, but I wasn't paying attention to them. But all of a sudden, like, boom, they were there, instantaneously, and it was just like they just instantaneously manifested, and so and so it was just like, wow, these were always there right in front of me, but I just wasn't paying attention. And it was just like, it felt, a second before that, it was just like streets, concrete, lights, wires, and just very sterile, just very like automation machine and everything else like that. And all of a sudden, boom, here are these trees. And yeah, the trees are planted in its decoration, aesthetic, and everything else, but it's life. And some of these trees have been here for a while, and so it was just like all of a sudden, out of nowhere, here's all this vitality that was just overlooked. And now at this moment, as it's spring here, we can see the green, and it's further evident. But sometimes it's just a reminder that like sometimes we can be overlooking the things that are just like attuned with us and just vibing with us at that moment. So I appreciate that, and I'm just reminded as I look at the trees now, and experience things. So trees, like fish and water and animals, are very beautiful and healthy joy.
And I feel like that's kind of how like a life is, and I feel like how like at least like in my walk with my faith, I feel like that's how like I feel like I see life sometimes. Like I see like temptation, I see the devil, I see like sin, but like I feel like the trees, like the good part of salvation and like God's word is like what like people need to see, like, and people need to experience more. That's why I just love being out in nature, because I just feel in touch with God. I feel in touch with myself.
Beautiful.
So just like that's like my experiences with that.
Yeah. So how do you describe your faith?
I guess I'd say I'm a Christian.
Okay.
I've been raised in the Christian faith, and it's what I believe in.
Beautiful.
And I guess it just kind of helps guide. It helps guide me through life. I feel like it's principles of just like kindness and loving thy neighbor, and just like treating others with full respect are ones I do kind of like have problems with, but I do try my best to like follow them, and I feel like it helps me like stay like a good grounded person.
Yeah. Have you seen any of the videos the videos that What's Out has with some of the other kinfolk?
I have, yes.
All right. So did you see the one with the what's it called? Confirmation. Have you seen that series? With
No, sir, I haven't.
there was the one with her name is it's I want to say Minja. The brother's name is JB the Preacher. That's what he goes by. They do music. They're out of California and the land of the Tongva. But it's a Christian collective, and they do like Christian-oriented music. And so she's a producer. I think he's a producer as well. They make the music. They have a studio, and so Corey and I think it was Corey and Xavier do an interview with both actually 3 people from that group called Confirmation. And they were talking about their spiritual experience and experience of spiritual awakening and some of the challenges they experience in life, and how their faith in God and in the Christian faith specifically helps guide them through those challenges, and continually listening to that voice of guidance and balance and even righteousness to continue walking in this life. So. And you said you have yet to see those either of those videos?
No, sir.
Okay, that's great. That's cool. So one of the things that I share. So to be honest, the candid where I'm coming from, I am coming from an experience of the earth. I love everybody, and I see a truth within each tradition. Like for example, when Jesus talks about his apostles, like his followers, his disciples. He talks about how many may talk about Jesus and this and the other, but then Jesus says, well, I need to see the fruits. I need to see like the works, and it's beautiful to proclaim Jesus, but then it's a matter of like when I was poor, did you come and provide me with food? When I was locked up in jail, did you come and visit me? When I was sick, did you come and help and heal me? And so that's where like the essence, that's where the substance of the faith is manifested, is when we do that benevolent work, just like with the benevolent Samaritan and additionally. So along those lines, for myself, whenever I see truth, whenever I see somebody feeding the poor, whenever I see somebody helping and healing the sick, whenever I see somebody communicating benevolence and providing that well-being for others, I see the Spirit. I see what Jesus is talking about, and so I honor that and I study that. And so from many years ago, when I finished when I completed law school, I began to like seriously study that. And so that's where my spiritual base is coming from. So I study the Gospels. I read the Gospels. This week the reading in my faith in the Gospels is Luke. I want to say chapters 17 through 18. It might be 19. I think it's 17 through 18. But anyways, I regularly read the Gospels. We do that on a regular basis. It's a beautiful thing. And one of the things when connecting with Christian kinfolk that I like to share as like a foundation is that for some people, like the Gospels and the Bible can be very intimidating, right? The Gospels and the Bible can be very intimidating to kind of just like immerse oneself in, to study and kind of understand, because there's a lot of writing there and it's very heavy. It's very serious and intense. But for those who have an interest and for those who want to like learn further, what I encourage is to simply look at the Sermon on the Mount, particularly within the Gospel of Matthew, chapters 5 through 7, because Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount shares basically the essence of his teachings right there in Matthew 5 through 7. It begins with the Beatitudes, and it basically goes through the whole spiel of what Jesus shares throughout the Gospels. And in reading just those 3 chapters, one has a very substantial introduction towards the gospel, the whole gospel that Jesus shares. And there's so much to talk about just from that foundation. And so that's one of the things that kind of when talking with Christian brethren, that's one of the things I communicate kind of like as a foundation for building and working with each other. So because this life is all about benevolent works. It's all about healing. In Hebrew, it's called tikkun olam, which is healing of the universe. And so it's recognizing everyone is suffering, everyone is experiencing some experience of unease, fear, sorrow, loneliness, or whatever else. And everybody has a gift in this life to provide for the well-being of somebody else. Everybody has a talent. Everybody has a skill that helps to improve the well-being of others. And so it's for each of us to recognize that, to be rooted in the knowledge that the sovereignty of God exists within us, the divine presence exists within us, and we are equipped to provide some healing to somebody else. We have that charge. And so it's for us to find out what that talent, what that skill is, to cultivate it, to hone it, whether it's making jewelry, whether it's working with fish, whether it's working with animals, whether it's having conversations, whether it's going on a boat and rowing and getting the physical exercise. And additionally, all those things have some type of physical benefit for ourselves, but also for others as well. So regardless of what tradition people come from, and additionally, everybody has something to bring to the table. And everybody does bring something to the table. So that's what I encourage, and that's the type of conversation and type of interaction that I encourage when meeting any type of kinfolk in this life. So anyways, somehow this soapbox got underneath me and I started standing on it, but that's just my experience and some of just my candid kind of approach towards conversation and interaction with kinfolk.
And I feel like the concept of at least right now, in the times and culture, people misconstrue certain faiths like Christianity into being some hatred people. Because I feel like people think that Christians hate people who are gay. They hate people who are trans. No, as a Christian, I love them. I care about every person because they bring something to my table.
Mm-hmm.
We're all equally we're all sinners. I don't know what our backgrounds are. God sees us all the same. I just think to me it's about the value of that person and how they fight those temptations. I guess
Yeah.
I feel like people just see faith as a thing that can be used as a weapon against some groups.
Yeah.
And I feel like I just kind of misconstrues.
Exactly. And that's exactly what Jesus teaches against. Jesus talks about the Pharisees and says that the Pharisee, and that's the one thing that Jesus talks about on the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus says that, he's like, don't think that I've come to abolish the law. I have not come to abolish the law. I've come to fulfill the law. And Jesus says that, listen to the teachings and the laws that Moshe Rabbeinu provides, because it's only until your righteousness exceeds those teachings that you enter into the sovereignty of heaven. So we have to have a knowledge about what is right and how to walk in this life. But at the same time, those that do have that knowledge, the Pharisees and the Sadducees of his time, would weigh people down with all these obligations and hypocrisy and contradictions, wouldn't do the same thing themselves, but were putting these expectations on others who didn't have the same knowledge and had to rely upon the authority of others. And so it was just a very heavy-handed kind of authoritarianism, and Jesus lambasted that, said, you putting too much obligation and everything else like that, too much guilt tripping and everything else like that. But the frustrating thing is to see the same thing going on right now by those who have that knowledge today. And that's what keeps so many people away from listening to Jesus' words or words from other teachers as well, because those who have that knowledge very often are very heavy-handed with that and are very judgmental and have all these rules and devaluations and and then break people down in order to be subjugating and obedient and dependent upon those authoritarian figures, when that's exactly what Jesus didn't do. Jesus is like, no, don't do that. Here it is. You've received without giving, now give without receiving. And so that's the nature of it. And then further, another example of that, we're particularly talking about the LGBTQ experience, and additionally, first of all, one thing that's beneficial to recognize, there's just so much hurt, there's so much pain, there's so much predatoriness amongst people, recognizing that. And so there's a lot of sensitivity, there's a lot of overcompensations in all directions. So it's a matter of recognizing that. And like you said, at the end of the day, it's about love and it's about support. And additionally, now that being said, we can disagree. We don't have to agree about everything. And just because we disagree about something doesn't mean we hate each other. We can agree and be like, yo, no, that's not me. I don't agree with that. You do what you do, and there I see the negatives with that. Whether it's LGBTQ, whether it's alcohol or drinking or this and the other. Like, yo, I see harms in that, and you know what? I see the cause and effect. I ain't doing that. You do that, that's on you, and you experience the consequences accordingly. I love you all the same, but I just that ain't me. So that's just we can disagree about something and still love each other. I'm not saying, now here's the thing, now many Christian brethren might disagree with me. I'm not actually saying that they're going to hell. I say we all answer for everything that we do, say, and think in this life. We're all held accountable. We all approach some experience of that judgment, of that like reconciliation of what we've done in this life. And there's nobody in this life who is that authority to say one way or the other. But that being said, like, I'm not condemning anybody. So because that's not on me to do. What my role in this life to do is to share what I've recognized as healthy, as much as I know, and to listen to those and to study those who say that they have something that's healthy, and say, okay, let's chop it up, let's compare notes, and let's build. But I'm not here to say da 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 da. There's enough of that already. I don't need to do that. So that being said, Jesus provides a very beautiful example of that type of understanding and love and acceptance and forgiveness in a very unlikely place in the Gospels. I don't know how familiar you are with the Gospels and additionally, or the New Testament, but so if you know, like, the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the out of the four Gospels, there's one Gospel that's kind of distinct from the other three. In my day growing up and as a child, we had Sesame Street, and there's a song in Sesame Street called "One of These Kids is Doing His Own Thing." So out of those four Gospels, one of those kids who's doing his own thing is John. The Gospel of John is just hardcore, like, militant. In the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was with God, and with the Word was God. Here it is. So it's just very like, yo, it's very boom, here it is, what's up? Where the other Gospels kind of ease into it and say, here's Jesus, here's the birth, and here's this and the other. John is just like, yo, what's happening? So that's just the nature of John, beauty as it is. Now, the interesting thing is, exactly amidst that militance of the Gospel of St. John, there is perhaps the greatest story of forgiveness and compassion and understanding, exactly in that militance, out of all of the Gospels. And it's the story when a woman is found committing adultery, and the men from the town, like, bring her and put her in front of Jesus. He's just sitting in the corner, in the spot, writing on the floor and everything else like that. And here they say, "Oh, we found this woman committing adultery. Now the teachings tell us we have to stone somebody. So what do you say, Jesus?" And he kind of just nonchalantly just looks up, and he's like, "He who is without sin cast the first stone." There it is. And then he just goes back writing on the ground and everything else like that. And then one by one, everybody else dips and leaves, because they all know that they ain't the cleanest kinfolk in the crew. So meanwhile, the only person left standing is the woman. And eventually Jesus looks up again, and he's like, "Yo, where'd everybody go? There's no one here to condemn you." And the woman says, No, master, they all left. And he's like, "Well, I don't condemn you either. Now, go and don't sin no further." How about that? It's not a free clearance. It's not like, yo, go and do your thing while bucking. No, you've been forgiven. You have this redemption. Now let's walk in a healthy path. So, but it's a beautiful, beautiful story of, again, love, acceptance. We can love people and disagree and say, yo, you're tripping right there. If a kinfolk is strung out on heroin or something else like that, I'm not going to say, yo, do your heroin and everything else like that. Yo, no, it's hurting. It's hurting. So it's a matter of recognizing, I love you. But yo, right there, that's causing harm, not just to others, but to yourself. So it's just a matter of being honest about that. Now, the thing about LGBTQ brethren that I know for many years, back in the 80s and 90s when I'm a youngster, before it was as mainstream as it is today, way before what it is at the moment. Like, it was way, like, low key. But what I recognize is this: when I was young, many of the LGBTQ brethren were very intelligent and very honest, calling things out, the hypocrisies of authorities, and additionally, and we're very much on the high levels of PC, like genuine PC, like calling things out, whether it's racism, sexism, classism, or whatever. Like just knowing what the issues are and calling it out. But what I recognize, to be honest, is that eventually, well, I don't want to get into my whole LGBTQ spiel, but what I recognize is that as much as the PC awareness is, what I recognize, and this took a long time because I'm not perfect, and I go through my own in life, my own challenges in terms of relationships, proper healthy relationship between man and a woman. And additionally, we don't have a lot of guidance in popular culture that guides the masses of youth to know what's healthy and how to treat each other with respect and to be loyal and genuine and supportive of each other. And instead, we learn how to be predatory. We learn how to like use men use women and women use men and try to like up our egos and our standing and our status and how what other people think about us for whatever type of gratification, whether it's sexual, mental, physical, academic, or whatever else. We learn how to utilize how to manipulate and hurt each other in this respect, and it's very predatory. All right, I know you know your shoelaces, yeah. I figure it was intentional because you're looking too sharp otherwise. Peace and blessings, bro. But it's just very predatory. And I see those same tendencies within the LGBTQ as well, because ultimately sex isn't just for gratification. It's not just some individual's expression of liberalism and whatever else. Sex is purposeful, and it's a miraculous union between a man and a woman that creates life. And so it has that purpose, and that's why it's beneficial for it to exist within the construct. I could say the confines as well, if we're just going to be candid, whatever. But within that bond and that support of marriage and commitment, because it's a mind meld, and without that type of support, without that type of commitment, there's insecurity, it's unsettledness, and then people become like unsure about what other people are doing, what the intentions are, and additionally, and then miscommunication, and then egos and everything else gets complicated, and then things become staticky. So it's beneficial to have that upfront commitment and support and bond with each other that's open, that other people recognize and support as well, because that mind meld it's for life, as Jesus says. When a man and woman join together, the two become one flesh, and what God has brought together, let no man tear asunder. So it's a serious bond, whether it's marriage or not. It's an inextricable link. It's a cipher. It's like one of the greatest ciphers that exists on this earth, in this earthly realm. And when it's done in a kind of like just there and there and there, the cipher becomes staticky. It becomes cloudy. It becomes diluted. And then there's jealousies. The love triangles, love quadrangles, and pentagonons. How about that? That's how complicated it is. It doesn't even make sense. Pentagons and hexagons, and however many people get thrown into that cipher, that's how complicated it gets, and that's how unsteady it gets. And then it just becomes further suffering and everything else like that gets compounded. So that's what I recognize through my own walk in life, and additionally, and I'm going to get off that spiel because I've been running my mouth a lot, but that's what I recognize. So we can see the harms, we can see the suffering in it, and disagree with it, but still love the people, not condemn the people, and continue to support and build, and live continually accordingly. So that's my spiel on that.
Yeah, actually, it's like it's only God's place to any judge, you know. And so I feel like as a man who sins, you know, like I can't judge someone who's gay. I can't judge someone who's trans. Like, and we are all kinfolk, as you said, you know, like they are all like in that same boat, you know, like we're all sinners. But I guess like people just think like so many Christians hate that, you know, and I just feel like that's a sad thing because like, I love them, you know, like they're good people. It's just that one fundamental thing that I can agree with. Like I feel like personally, I believe that that it's temptation that the devil gives you, but it's like the power that God gives you to fight it. I feel like, and people kind of like, I don't know if they agree with that, but that's how I live my life, you know. So when something's like something hard's happening, or something like it's been a hard day, I'm like, you know what? Don't fall back into sin, you know. Like get out of it, because the Lord's always watching. He's always with me, you know. Like if I'm going into like a hard workout, like a hard thing, you know, I just think, like, you know what? God's there. I'll get through it. I don't know. I live my life personally.
Yeah. And I'm reminded of something. I mentioned the interview that that What's Out has with the confirmation group out of California. When they were talking about God, and they were talking about how God speaks to each one in different ways, and providing guidance, and going through the travails of life, going through university and curves in a path, and additionally, and I was thinking about something when I was listening to what they were saying, because it's a beautiful thing, but I also recognize a challenging thing. But what I noticed was that they invoke the name of God, at least the English name of God, in talking. God speaks to me this, God says this, and God says that. And to be honest, in one way, it's very refreshing, because as adults, particularly in what I do, there are fewer adults who actually have like the courage and the honesty to even utilize the name of God. I myself, I'm a spiritual teacher, and so I delve in the scriptures on a regular basis, and so I'm regularly in that kind of experience. But that being said, when I have these type of conversations, I am very careful about even how I utilize, I got low battery. I'm careful about how I even utilize the name of God, because I know that it's such a charged word. And the minute we say God, some people are just going to turn off, because their experience with that word is usually, or is very often, somebody who just says, God doesn't like this and God doesn't like that. And so even when they just hear the word, even if you're saying it with love and everything else, and you're like being supportive, they just hear that word and they just get triggered. They just like, oh no, here comes one of those da 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 da. So for me, knowing that, I'm actually I am shy of saying the name of God. Now, God is very much in the forefront of what I say and what I share, and additionally, but I know, even though that's what I'm saying, that's what I'm communicating, that's not what the person is hearing when they hear that from me. So it's only when somebody starts utilizing God language that I'm like, all right, now I can release the hounds a little bit and like talk about God now, and utilize that word. So that's one of the things I appreciate about that particular. I see X is back on, it looks like. That's one of the things I appreciated particularly about that conversation that Xavier has with, and X, can you tell me the name of the sister? Her name was like Minja or Minju. That's what it is, Minju, yeah? Sister from Korea, who was at MIT, and then went on a further path. But anyways, so I appreciate having that language. Now, that being said, here's the flip side, because I could never just be cheery, positive all the time. I gotta give the flip side now. And here's the other thing that I observed. In utilizing the God language, we have to be very careful, because if we attribute everything to God, it's like being on a very small boat with a whole lot of stuff. It can get wickety-wackety, is what we say in my family. It can get very shaky, because it's just that God is a huge weight. So one of the things that I was thinking about, and I was going to include this in the conversation with Mañana, I still might, but what I recognize is another way of talking about God, and including that consciousness and that intentionality, is by sharing stories. Like if we're coming from the Christian context and experience, like when we talk about the adulteress who was found and brought before Jesus, utilizing those stories and grounding the word God is out there. It's out there in the universe. It's huge. It's big. It's gigantic. Sometimes it's helpful to kind of bring the language down back to earth. And one of the ways of doing it, while still staying true to the message of the Gospels or whatever it is, the tradition is that we're representing, is through stories, and saying, it's kind of like this example, like the woman who's found committing adultery, or it's kind of like the benevolent Samaritan, or it's kind of like this, because now we're still talking about God, but we're utilizing earthly terms, because Jesus himself, he talked about the sovereignty of heaven, but very often he talked in parables. He talked about the seeds, the mustard seed, the man walking along the path, and the seed falling along the path, because he knows that's the language that people are living. He knows that people are in the field. They know what the seeds are. They know what a mustard seed does. They know a mustard seed goes like brah, and it's huge. So he knows that that's the language people are familiar with, and that's how he connects with people. If he came down just saying, Hashem and Baruch Atah Elohim, and X was flexing Hamotzi. I saw the interview X. So if Jesus just came down with the God talk, people are the people around him are just gonna shut off, because like, oh, here comes one of those Pharisees again talking da 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 da, and he's not talking the language that they're ready to hear, because that's not the life that they're living at that moment. So I just think about, like, when I was listening to the beautiful stories that the brethren are sharing, and even in our conversation today, I think about the benefit of being able to articulate that same message in a way that's somewhat further earthly, and I don't mean to like water it down or anything, but just in a way that it's in the language that people are receptive towards hearing. I love God, and I love talking about God, and I love utilizing God language, so I'm like, let's go for it. But at the same time, I just remember, and I'm reminded of that from the other interviews, so it's not necessarily applicable in our conversation at the moment, but I just reminded of that. And the other thing also, while talking about words, now I know what you're saying in terms of sinner and sinning, and I get that experience. But again, like when many cats hear that word sin, they think, oh, here it comes again. It comes that judgmentalism and condemnation. Don't tell me about me, and don't drag me down, and don't give me the guilt trip and everything else like that. But I know that for many people coming from the Christian faith, there's that necessity of saying that, because it's our way of confession and acknowledgement and humbling, and additionally, so we have to be candid and upfront and courageous in proclaiming that. But at the same time, when people hear that, again, they just get triggered, and they hear just like, oh, here comes that. And one other thing that I shared at the moment is the distinction between judgment and condemnation. Because when people say don't be judgmental, we got to be judgmental in this life. We have to be able to recognize like right and wrong, and that's just not even just right and wrong, but like me sitting here on this bench outside, I have to judge that this joint is going to hold my weight, or the ground beneath me, the concrete, is going to be able to hold me up. We have to make judgments on a daily basis, thousands and thousands of times a day. We have to judge in this life. We have to make judgment calls. We have to discern like what things are going to be like upholding. So that's one thing. But the other one is condemnation. That's the one we have to be very careful of, like you were saying. Like it's not our job to condemn. That's not our team. Like we can share information, we can share what we've learned, we can share what we've experienced and gone through, but not to condemn. And condemnation is like, you're going to da da da, and this is going to da da da, and that's when people put that weight on and everything else like that. So now when people hear judgment, they still equate it with condemnation, but it's beneficial to recognize the distinction between the two. Judgment is just like saying, the sky is blue. That's a judgment call. It's not, I don't see a pink. I could be pink, but I don't see pink. I don't see green necessarily. Blue, that's my judgment call. The sky is blue right now. That's a judgment call. I'm not saying the sky is raining sulfur and brimstone and everything else like that. That's condemnation. I'm not saying that right now. So there's a distinction in that, and we have to judge, but we have to also not condemn. So that's just one other thing that I share.
I just think it's about like adding like malice into it. Like I think like yes, judge, but don't judge with malice. Like don't judge in a form to condemn, I guess, if that makes sense.
It was difficult to hear what you say. Don't judge in the what?
Don't judge in a form to condemn.
Right, yeah.
Judge with that inclination. And back to what you said about like sharing the gospel. I feel like Lord, like He says in the Bible to share and to preach it. But I love your take on like trying out those parables and trying those a more earthly, modern, points to share. Because I feel like times I've shared it, it's like turned people off from it. They've gotten like mad or offended. So thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And again, like oftentimes we're accustomed to communicating in the way that we're accustomed to communicating, and we don't think much of like how other people might hear it. But it's beneficial to be mindful of that, and we don't intend certain things, but just because that's what people are accustomed to, that's how people receive it. So and it has little to do with what we intend, yeah. So it's just a matter of being mindful, and speaking the language that's where people are, that's accessible and that people can relate with, and recognizing, people are triggered. Like, people have gone through a lot of difficult things, and from people who speak a very similar language, and it's very difficult for others to see the difference between somebody who's coming in trying to like enslave somebody with their teachings, and somebody who's actually trying to like, here's something you might want to think about this, and this, and you might find this helpful. It's very difficult for some people to see the difference of that, and it could be like from going from like 50 to 100 or whatever else, big huge difference. But for some people, it's like, it's all 99 to me. So whatever sense that makes. But I'm trying to find an extension so I can plug my phone in to recharge. I got a new phone at the moment, and I don't think I have the right adapter to be doing it in a proficient way. So I got all these wires and all these things, but hey, and this battery kind of, I'm shocked. This battery kind of goes quick, but hey, it is what it is. So I've got 13. I got 13% on my battery right now, so we can just work with that as it is.
Yeah, I guess like you just said, it is what it is. I feel like that way, it's just like so good to experience life, Like, at least for me, I feel I've got through like a little hardships in my life. It is what it is,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like people get so hung up in like every moment. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but it's just like,
yeah. Well, and also you're younger, and so like you have less of like an intrinsic kind of perception of being authoritative or authoritarian, and additionally, and so there's intrinsically an increasing amount of trust towards you. Where somebody coming in with these gray hairs and this little whatever this is, and people are like, oh, wait a minute, oh no, I could just say peace, and they're like, oh, don't tell me what to do, and I'm like, what? So people have, in general speaking, increasing proclivity of having trust towards you and listening to you, and trusting that you're not trying to like do this and the other. Now that's in many ways, and that could be presumptuous, because somebody your age or just a year younger than you might see you as a very authoritarian figure, just because you have confidence and just because you speak with some knowledge. And additionally, but yeah, it's beneficial to be mindful of with anybody we talk with, I strive to maintain a humble mindset, and recognize we're all a teacher. Everybody has something to teach. Everybody has something to teach, and everybody has something to learn too. Everybody has something to learn.
Like Confucius said, there's this phrase that I learned in Chinese class. It's like if you're on a path with two people, it's like they're on a path and they're walking, and there are three of them, but they're all teachers, like they all learn from each other and from the past experiences, I guess, like, yeah, if that makes sense.
Beautiful. And wait, did you just flex some Confucius right there?
I did, yeah.
What? Yo, that's the teacher right there. There's Confucius. So I'm a recent, or comparatively recent. I've studied Tao Te Ching for years and years and years, over 20 years. Confucius for over maybe about a decade at this point, and Min Ke. I'm just like recent years of studying Min Ke, who is like a younger scholar in that lineage. And I describe it like if you go to a cookout, the Lao Tzu, Confucius, and Min Ke are like the three generations of the cookout. Lao Tzu is like the old grandpa who talks about nature, and you just like don't understand him too much, but it sounds like he knows what he's talking about. Confucius is like the chief who's like saying what's what. Sometimes he cracks a joke, but he's just like he's kind of like a little bit of a distance. Like he's like the man, so he's like a little hard to approach. Like he's not available and everything. And then Min Ke is like the youngster. He's like the third generation who kind of just breaks it down. He just like explains what the grandpa and the chief just said and everything else like that. So that being said, Confucius, one of the classic teachings. I'm getting another low battery notice. One of the classic teachings that Confucius teaches about being a teacher, he says something about like he has a lot of classic lines in the Analects, or the Lun Yu as it's called in Chinese, but or Mandarin. But one of the classic lines is that he says like, um, there are many people. If you think like I'm like a whiz and I know everything, there are many people who have much greater knowledge than me about many different topics. But I guarantee you, or I guarantee you'll find it very difficult to find anybody who has a greater love for learning than I do. And so that's one of the things. Like I was like, yes, that's awesome right there. Him as the teacher saying like he loves to learn still, and that he doubts that anybody loves to learn as much as he does. There was another classic thing where he was visiting the Grand Temple, and he was asking all questions the whole time, like questions about this, questions about all the rituals and everything like that. And afterwards, somebody like one of the other scholars or whatever made like a side remark to somebody else. He's like, "This is the great master. Don't tell me he's a great master. He had to ask questions about everything." And then somebody later on relayed that to Confucius, and Confucius was like, that's the ritual. And so he has like this humor and like this self-deprecation, but at the same time, he knows his stuff, and he shares some gems and everything else like that. So, yeah.
And I guess like he also said like a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's how like I live my life. Like especially with that fish store job, I was so scared to ask for that job. Like I was nervous, man. But I was like, yo, that one step gave me this awesome journey. I've met some great guys and some great people. And it's just like, it's always those small steps that grow you as a person, I feel like.
Yeah. And it helps to put things in perspective. It makes things increasingly accessible. And it's encouraging. And it's a matter of recognizing that everything's not just today, and everything doesn't have to be done at this moment. It's a process, and so it's just a matter of doing what's appropriate at this moment, and completing that, and continuing on. And there may be setbacks, there may be detours, and everything else like that, but it's just a matter of continuing on, because everything is just continually the next step, and just being focused on that, being humble with that, being concentrated with that, and not trying to take on too much at any time.
Yeah, man.
Beauty. So, all right, well, I'm down at 8. We're playing Limbo now. How low can we go on the battery front? But it might be beneficial if we wrap up this joint at the moment, unless there's anything else you want to discuss before we get off.
All right, man. That's good. Just thank you for this. God bless you, man.
God bless you as well, brother. And I appreciate you. Like I've seen you like jump on some of the conversations in recent months, and additionally, so I appreciate the flow through, and I appreciate like connecting and meeting you today, and chopping up. I appreciate that. And God willing, we'll talk again and continue to build.
Yes, sir.
All right, brother.
Hey,
peace and blessings to you, Roger.
God bless you, brother.
All right.
Hey, peace out over it.
All right.
All right, bye, man. Thank you.
All right, bro.
Bye.
Blessed love and peace. None of that audio probably got on this joint, but that's okay.